Good afternoon. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa has missed its own deadline to finalize a new method for determining the tariffs that you and I pay at Eskom for municipalities and all other electricity licensed suppliers that they are charging. The Energy Regulator says it will now only be finalized early next year due to delays in the appointment of technical specialists and drafters. The initial June deadline was extended to the 30th of September. The saga actually began last year when Nersa rejected Eskom's tariff application for the 2022-2023 and the 2024-25 financial years on the basis that it was prepared using the 2016 methodology to determine tariffs, which Nersa held as expired. The court ruled in Eskom's favour and ordered Nersa to determine the tariffs for the first time for 3 years in February 25th. We are joined now by Mr. Nhlanhla Gumede, who is Nersa's regulator member for electricity generation on these developments. Mr. Gumede, thank you very much this afternoon for joining us. Tell us a bit more about what has caused Nersa to miss this particular deadline set to allow the regulator to determine that methodology that is going to be used to determine electricity tariffs.
Firstly, good afternoon to you and the viewers. Just to indicate, this is a project. As you would know, Mr. Mbanja, projects do have project challenges, delays, and in terms of approvals and other challenges. And because this project is itself a change program, is in fact going to effectively change the manner in which prices for electricity tariffs and prices for electricity are set in South Africa, is that it does involve a lot of change issues. That is, it needs to be nest. There is clearly a need for more engagement. So yes, there were delays in terms of procuring those technical specialists. However, there was a request also from stakeholders for further engagement. So we are using this time effectively to get as many people on board as possible in this journey that we are taking, moving towards cost-reflective unbundled tariffs.
Let's talk about something interesting when it comes to the story. In that consultative paper that Nersa released last year, the regulator was very clear about the importance of a new methodology because over the last decade, electricity prices, or tariffs rather, have increased by 175%. That's well above inflation, while load shedding has set in due to unplanned outages. What does Nersa want to see or hope to see at the end of this process?
Well, let's put it this way. The industry is changing. So what we are wanting to say is that firstly, whilst a methodology was okay to set revenue, allowed revenue for Eskom, when in fact Eskom was the industry. But with the introduction of the private sector, clearly you need to create a dispensation where you will level the playing field. Firstly, to then allow private generators, not only in terms of the registration process that was initiated thanks to the work that was done by the president, but to also just allow other private generators to be able to get into the system and also be able to sell to distributors and also to the normal consumer. But you need to create an environment and clear tariffs in terms of how that is done. Secondly, there is a clear need for leveling the playing field for all of the distributors. At the moment, I don't know whether most people know, but municipalities and other distributors actually buy from Eskom distribution. They are customers of Eskom distribution, with everything that comes with that. So what we are looking to do is to level the playing field where all distributors, be it Eskom as a distributor, municipalities as a distributor, and any private distributor, and also even to allow for bilateral contracts. Now, that's what we are trying to do with the migration in terms of moving from setting revenue for Eskom to setting cost-reflective and unbundled tariffs for the industry.
And you obviously have a lot of concerns when you look at that consultative paper that you released exactly a year ago, because the current methodology is one that it was set in 2016. It was not too long ago. Besides the fact that you are leveling the playing field, in particular for all the other municipalities, distributors, retailers, and the like, what other concerns do you have with Eskom using a methodology that is 6 years old?
Well, let's put it this way, as you rightly indicate. Firstly, it is clear that the methodology is not yielding the results. Oh, by the way, although it is a 2016 methodology, it is an adaptation of a methodology that was first developed and applied around 2009. So there's MYPD1, 2000, and then MYPD2, MYPD3, MYPD4, but all of them had basically were constructed the same way, which is about setting a revenue for Eskom. Now, that was okay when the only player was Eskom, and also it may have been okay if the resultant prices were not excessive, and which have resulted, for instance, in the regulator, in most cases, deviating from the methodology itself and being taken to court by Eskom for deviating from its own methodology. So we need to move away from that and actually set the new rules. Hopefully, the new methodology will yield, firstly, better predictable prices, cost-reflective tariffs, but it will hopefully result in lower increases than what we are currently seeing, over and above leveling the playing field. So in fact, all we are simply then saying is that the new methodology, firstly, it's about moving away from setting Eskom revenues to setting tariffs, as what the Act, in fact, has actually required of us to do, to set tariffs across the board. That's the one thing. But there is an issue, as you would know, that Eskom is unbundling. So there is a new company that needs to be created, which is the National Transmission Company. That company needs its own tariff. At this stage, we all don't have a tariff for that national company, and it to be established from March next year. So we do need to use the current methodology in conjunction with the proposed change, but it to be something that needs to be negotiated with Eskom, such that we can end up with a tariff for the national transmission company.
Mr. Gumede, you are, if I remember correctly, the only board member who's permanent in the Nersa board as a regulator member. Let me ask you, when it comes to this methodology, should we expect that a new methodology is going to lead to us paying, as South Africans, much less for electricity tariffs, which by the standards that we have seen, the tariffs has been going up by nearly 200% in the last few years?
Well, let's put it this way. The biggest part of the tariff comes from generation. And people have been saying, well, there is room out there for private generators to come onto the system. Unfortunately, the only way that private generators at this stage, other than for bilateral contracts, but for private generators to come onto the system to be able to bring to bear those cheaper prices, is if they actually are procured by Eskom. So they become suppliers to Eskom. So in fact, everybody just sees one bulk generation charge from Eskom. That's the biggest contributor. Now, the view is that with this change in system, it allows for other generators to be able to then themselves, in terms of the unbundled tariff, so there'll be clarity in terms of what the transmission tariff would be, as well as the distribution tariff. That is, the use of systems would be clear above board. So we'll be able to then hopefully enjoy the better prices that might be brought into the system by other generators, be it supplying the transmission or that way, or actually supplying municipalities themselves. But that should open up an opportunity for better prices. But it can only happen if they are allowed an opportunity to themselves be able to sell directly to either municipalities or to end customers or traders. So that's what we are hoping to do with this unbundled tariff. But it doesn't happen unless the tariff itself is unbundled.
Kwabe, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is Nhlanhla Gumede, who is Nersas regulator member for electricity generation, talking to us about the reasons behind them missing the deadline to actually set a new pricing methodology for power electricity tariffs for Eskom.